What's up, everybody, and welcome to another video. I'm Rich Wilson, founder and film director at Vibe Media, where we help your brand build an influencer-level online presence using filmmaking tools and tips to tell your story. Well, we have another movie challenge for you, and this time we're diving deep into the Best Cinematography Oscar winner, 1917. Now, with this being a movie challenge review, there will be spoilers, so you have been warned. Spoilers happening in the episode, so you don't want any of that if you haven't seen it. So, if you've seen the movie and you're ready to go, then what am I doing still here talking, huh? Well, on with the episode! Hey everybody, welcome to Vibe Check, the podcast for aspiring filmmakers and film enthusiasts like ourselves. I'm Rich Wilson, founder and director at Vibe Media, and with me is Dana and Forrest.
Yes,
What's up,
I
guys?
got introduced first this time.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Well, this week we are talking, it's another episode of our film challenge. Back in the first episode, we challenged each other to watch different films. Mm-hmm. A couple weeks ago, we talked about Parasite with Dana for our Halloween episode. Amazing. Great pick. Great pick. This time, we are going to talk about my pick. 1917.
Oh, I was so hesitant to watch this movie.
Really?
Okay, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I love war movies. Dunkirk is one of my favorite movies.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that maybe like 3 times in theaters along with Anthropoid. I felt like it was a movie purely for cinematographers. Like, I just didn't think the story would be interesting. I didn't think the dialogue would be interesting. I thought it was going to be kind of boring. And I was really, really wrong. And I'm very glad I was.
So that was your first impression of the
Yes.
movie. Fantastic. Forrest.
I'm almost agreeing with you. I'm kind of expecting it to be for cinematography because that's what it was hyped up as. I don't think by any means that it's going to win anything for best actors or best screenwriting. There wasn't a lot of dialogue, so I kind of am not as pleasantly surprised as you. I guess I kind of expected that to be the case, but all in all, as a cinematographer myself, beautiful film. I always love single shot, quote unquote, single shot movies, which we'll talk about here in a second.
Oh yeah, and I honestly, I think Dana, you were a little right. This was a movie for cinematographers. Yes, it was a war movie, but it was a cinematic, brilliant movie. It was a masterpiece in cinematography, and probably one of the greatest cinematographers, at least in our day and age, Roger Deakins, which you even talked about Dunkirk, another one of his great cinematic, feats,
Mm-hmm.
just amazing work on that. But, this movie, for me, when I saw it just before everything shut down, was just absolutely amazing. I was glued to the screen the entire time, mostly because not just the cinematography, but because they shot it in a way to where it looked like it was one long take for the entire 2.5-hour movie.
It genuinely felt like it was my point of view watching this happen. I felt like I was right there with it, seeing all of this landscape, all of this movement, meeting these like other companies that they met along the way, or I guess more so he met along the way, unfortunately. But overall, it was just something like I started watching it while I was playing Yakuza because I was like, yeah, I can, it's whatever. And I stopped what I was doing and I just sat there and I'm like, oh my God, this is beautiful. Like, I don't think I ever would have taken the time to watch it if it wasn't for this, for what we're doing.
Right. But you'd probably watch it again.
I'm going to watch it again.
Yeah.
See, and I'm only disappointed in the fact that I didn't get to see this in theaters. It was one of those that I just never got around to doing. This is a film that would be beautiful on screen.
Oh, absolutely.
It reminds me a lot of that single shot, entrancing quality of it, where you feel like you're there. Gravity. The movie Gravity, where she was in space kind of by herself the whole time. People didn't really like that. It's not the most interesting story in the world, but for me, it kind of had that same effect of just you're so honed in on one thing that you forget how much time has passed. you're like, you look at the clock and you're like, oh, it's been an hour already. You're like, whoa, and everything just, you lose track of everything. So I think it was a great movie. Again, talking about the interesting fact of it being a single take, quote unquote. I always do that because, as we all know in the industry, single take movies are rare, if almost non-existent.
It's more in the TV side of things. I feel like now that they can pull it off, like with that Mr. Robot episode.
Yeah.
I think they won like an Emmy for it or
Right.
something.
Yeah.
And there's an old movie, I think I talked to you guys about it here, like another independent kind of movie called Time Code, and it was one of like Selma Hayek's first movies. It was 4 cameras that were single shot for the entire movie, and it was so hard to do, and that one didn't have any hidden cuts. That was a back in the day kind of thing. So this one, I do notice some hidden cuts. That's me being just the cinematographer myself. I told Rich purposefully that I wanted to, I'm not Googling how many there were.
Right.
I wanted to take a guess at how many there were. So when I was watching this movie, I counted 29 hidden cuts that were for sure. And then I had about 10 that were questionable. I had some that I was like, it could be a hidden cut or it could be just natural.
You know what, you weren't that far off from what we looked into. About around 34 hidden cuts in
At
the movie
least.
that have been confirmed or people have noticed. So if you have a keen eye on that, a lot of them were definitely easy to figure out. You know, when they went from the outside trenches into the interior of the trenches, sure, that was a cut because we know that you have to fix your ISO and you have to fix the aperture on the cameras just to meet yes, that makes sense. Or the obvious one when it gets knocked out and it goes 6 hours into the future.
I was impressed though because when I started counting, I was like, you know what, that's my goal for this movie was to look at that. I believe like the first part of the movie, before there was an actual like even hidden cut, was about 12 minutes.
Yes,
it was actually a very long shot.
Yeah, and the actors in the movie were talking about how filming this felt like it was like a stage play. You could not mess up. If you did, you had to go back to Mark A. And you could be 9 minutes into the scene and you screw up a line, crap, you have to go all the way back and have to film all of those 9 minutes again.
See, and that's why I think directors nowadays steer more towards those hidden cuts because it gives them that flexibility of doing that. Because that Time Code movie that I had mentioned just before, at the end of that movie, they talk about how many times they had to redo it. They had to redo it 16 times because it was an hour and like 45 minutes, all one shot, on 4 cameras.
Right.
That were in each other's shots all the time without showing up. So the logistical nightmare of trying to do a single shot.
So stressful.
And especially nowadays with the way films are shot and the things that they need to capture.
Right.
I don't blame them for doing the hidden cuts. They made it as seamless as possible. Again, to the normal untrained eye, it probably looks seamlessly.
Yep, here.
Almost
right
like
here.
an entire thing.
Yeah. But honestly, that was the beauty of it because it made it seem like it was just all one take, and that's what I loved about it. Cinematically, is you've got all those secret cuts and whatnot, but the way that they did it, you didn't really notice unless you've got a trained eye like you, Forrest. But it was amazing to go from. There were no jump cuts to another camera. They only filmed on one camera. Again, looking through the American Cinematographer issue of that's about 1917. Roger Deakins talks about they had a couple of cameras, some new ARRI Alexa LFs that were Alexa Mini LFs that were prototypes that ARRI basically put together just for this movie. Not to mention the stabilization camera equipment that they was all custom for this movie to be able to do everything that they were able to do. But they only, yes, they had a couple backup cameras, but they only used one camera, and only 2 focal lengths. They used a 35 millimeter lens and a 40 millimeter prime lens. It wasn't zoom. They were prime stationary lenses that were just 35 the entire time.
Well, and not to discredit anything, I noticed it just because that's my field.
Mm-hmm.
But I consider myself kind of a weird hybrid for somebody who went to film school, is that I am able to leave that sense of disbelief. Like, I actually can still critique a movie, but also see it for what it is. Because I even with the hidden cuts, all that stuff, it's beautiful. It's a phenomenal movie. I didn't mind that there were hidden cuts. So
I think the only time I questioned whether it wasn't a one shot, like it was just all one go, was when the brother got stabbed by the German pilot. I could see him physically get grayer, and I'm just thinking, there's no way they did this in post. There's no way they could edit him to look this gray. Like, this is makeup that's like put on him. That is the only time where I was like, okay, maybe here they might have done it, but maybe they did something in post. I genuinely don't know, because I didn't go to film school. I'm not educated on it.
And I don't think it was that. I think part of it could be the lighting, because as the movie progresses, it also gets more foggy, more.
But it shows him when he's holding him while he's dying. You can tell the difference between the 2 skin tones, and it's not. I wouldn't say it's anything lighting wise, because it is straight on at them, and they're out in the middle of the open.
Unless they got the makeup team down that like as you're following the other guy through that, following him, they're running on and putting a bunch of makeup on him and then running off.
And that could be the case though as well, because this movie is trying to pass along the length of time. It's saying that they have 8 hours, 9 hours till this attack
24.
happens, but the movie is only 2 hours. And if it's a single shot, then you need to subtly in people's mind
speed up
get some sort of trigger that time has passed since it happened. So maybe seeing that color, I didn't see it because I'm colorblind, so
that's right, I'm sorry.
For skin tone, for me it didn't really pop out, but it could be something that subtly was an unconscious thing that shows that like the body has been dead for a little bit of time, that maybe he was there for an hour.
Oh no, this was while he was still alive. He was physically still physically
and he was
getting grayer. It was you could tell he was dying. And I think,
which I will have to say, that part, it did personally, it shocked me.
I cried. I straight up cried.
because you're like, okay, he's gonna try to go save his brother and all that, and then 20, or I think at that point 45 minutes into the movie, he's dead.
When I thought, my brain for a second, I guess, got everything confused. I thought it was like the friend who didn't want to go in the first place that got murdered all of a sudden. Like, it didn't register in my brain that it was the brother who was sent on the mission that was the one who was stabbed and stayed behind.
And it was so quick,
because it happened so fast.
And I almost think if they had just waited until nighttime, like his friend wanted to, he could still very well be alive.
There's a lot of that consequence, though. I mean, they saved the guy in the plane. They could have.
They shouldn't have saved him. I understand what they were trying to do morally, but at the end of the day, war is war. You don't save the bad guys.
War was back then, too. War was not the same as it is now. It's very, like...
And I get it. I read the description. These guys were, like, volunteers. They were going there more so to help their team. Like, on the other hand, the Germans also really didn't get a say in whether they fought or not. So a human is a human. You want to save as many lives as you can, but he lost his life in
just
turn.
To show some kindness.
Yeah. And then the German guy still died, so it was almost like a double whammy. And for me personally, like, I expected the brother to die. I knew it was coming. I thought it was going to happen when they were walking through the mine shaft. Just the way it seemed, like the opening shot where he's like walking through the trenches and he's like super determined to just get out there and get it done and get this message to his brother to save his brother's life. For me, it was like, I really like this character. I want him to stay around, but that's just not the way it works in war movies.
And then he doesn't. Yeah, it was pretty crazy because I did not expect that, and I think it was brilliant on the production side. At least for the trailer, all you saw were the 2 guys. You saw a couple of scenes where the guy was doing the infamous run. That we could even get into later. Like, it didn't connect in my brain that, he's all by himself for 2/3 of the movie.
Well, and there's beautiful sets too. There really is. as far as the way that they've created these sets that are not creepy, I guess, but like it's eerie that there's no war. Like you can see it's destroyed by war, but there's nobody there anymore.
It really is no man's land.
So yeah, it is that no man's land feel. And then when there is, it adds to that suspense. There is like a gunshot that happens, and you're like, oh, that got me. Or, I'm half expecting them to like step on a landmine somewhere because that's always a classic trope. But
or like the tripwire that exploded in the German trench freaked me out.
Well, that happened so fast.
It did.
He was just talking about like, oh, don't make another step. There's a tripwire and then the rat, whatever. And you're like, oh, they're gonna like swoop it away, and instantly it like blew up, and you're like, whoa, what happened?
That's when I thought the brother died. I thought that was it. I was like, okay, he's too determined to survive this movie. That's the only outcome for him, unfortunately. And the worst part was he had such meaningful dialogue. Like it seemed a little pointless in that he was just telling stories to try and keep morale up. But when he's floating through the river halfway through and those white petals fall on him, I'm starting to tear up just thinking about it. Yeah, and it's like he worked in the orchard with his brother and his mom all the time. Like that was a part of his life, and he actually got to see that part of his life in a way. It was like, that breaks my heart.
The symbolism of him dying where he did, though, too, because it was just past where the orchard things were. It's a farm that he died on, just like he grew up on. There's a lot of that significance in there as well.
Are you saying that films use like subtle
metaphors,
metaphors and subtle messaging?
No, I don't think they're that smart.
No,
the door is blue because
Yeah, of course. No, I think one of the things that really stood out to me too, again, cinematography eye, is the pops of color, because you're dealing with such a drab color palette most of the time. It's very browns and greens and all those things that I do not like very much.
Because you can't see them.
Just because they blend together. It's really weird to me. But it makes all that more of an impact when when he's at night and it's, the flares going up in the air so they can see everything. The red that's there.
And the church fire. How amazing was that?
Beautiful.
Yeah, and how they lit that, it wasn't obviously they didn't set anything on fire. They used massive amount of sky panels, RE sky panels, in order to create that, similar to what Roger Deakins did for Skyfall. That scene in Skyfall where, again, another house on fire, and that intense scene, another really anxiety-driven scene where, oh my gosh, is he actually going to get out of this?
I don't know, man. Directors are missing out on practical effects. I say just set shit on fire at this point. I'd have too much fun.
And I was critiquing these German soldiers are like stormtroopers. They're like not very accurate with their weapons. I get that weapons weren't the same, but there were a couple of straight-on shots that they missed, and I was like,
well, also those weapons were not accurate, like historically wise. From in high school, I was always really interested in World War I and World War II, just because it's like, what?
Yeah.
And to understand that these people didn't have very accurate weapons, like how many shots did it take for him to kill the German pilot that stabbed him? And he was dead on in the middle of him, and it took at least 3 or 4. Yeah. So accuracy, like obviously they were definitely like stormtroopers. You can't shoot the main guy.
I get it. And again, that's me being just critique after knowledge nowadays with new movies and stuff too. Part of me is like, when he's shooting at the guy in the balcony that's shooting at him, wasting so many bullets. Like I felt like I was like, save your bullets, man. Like you're on your own. You have nobody else. But obviously you're not supposed to.
It's do or die, though.
Yeah, it's a different mindset, different time. You have to kind of put yourself back in that. So
you probably
And oh my goodness, when he opened the door and you're just like, there's gonna be someone on the other side of that door. You need to be ready. And then he just somehow survived getting shot. Like it looked like he got shot in the head and his helmet stopped it.
Yeah,
that could be.
Yeah, and because he
fell off and hit his head. So
and then he got knocked out for 6 hours, roughly.
I feel like that was a good point for them to take it from daytime to nighttime.
Well, and they had to. There had to have been some way, because like Forrest said, it was supposed to be, a certain time, like in 24 hours, this is going to happen. You need to get over there.
Yeah.
And this was all pretty much real time. It took them an hour and 30 minutes to get to, well, with the kid dying. And then it moved forward. Well, if it continued on, there would be no real drama to it because
he would have already gotten there.
He would have gotten there.
In 2 hours.
Yeah, he would have gotten there in 2 more hours. Everything would have been fine. Movie over. Run the credits. Right?
I like that it shows him finally going at night and showing how it wasn't as safe as he originally thought.
And it really wasn't.
No.
It was a fight.
Obviously it's war. It's never safe.
Mm.
But I feel like that, to me, that was like a moment where it's like, neither of you were right to go, but you're set out on, you're going to do something right, like stop this horrible event. Because that was, watching them when he's walking through the trenches for the first wave that's like about ready to go out towards the end, like, and you're just seeing these people like crying and just horrified and couldn't even move. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, yeah, he needs to do this. Like,
and then his actual, like, how far it was to get to the person he needed to. You're like, you expected him to get there and find the person immediately, mm-hmm. and he's not there in time to stop the first wave, and
right, and he continues to ask, where is he? Where is he? Oh, he's further
up there.
On. He's further on. He's further on. And then that run scene. Oh my gosh, amazing! And the cut that they used was actually kind of a mess up. He was not supposed to trip and fall and bump into the guy.
But it creates that realism to it that like it doesn't seem like a movie.
Why they used it.
Yeah, and I totally understand. It was definitely probably their best take.
Oh yeah.
And it was, it really was the perfection of like, this is really what it is. It wouldn't be a perfect run where he's just absolutely missing everybody all the time. It's
stumbling,
you're going to stumble, you're going to run into somebody, you're going to, there's going to be bombs that obscure the view. The bomb went off and there was a lot of smoke and you couldn't see him. You could barely see him, but it's like it was a perfect way of just putting you in that more viscerally.
Yeah. And then how about that Benedict Cumberbatch cameo?
Loved it.
Right there at the end, just like boom. It's like, oh,
hey, okay. I know you.
Wait a second.
What a rude guy, though. What a rude guy.
Hey, some men just like to fight, and I feel like when he, who was he? I can't remember the people's name, but when he was in the truck, and he's like, "I gotta go. I can't wait," and they're like, "Make sure there's witnesses around when you tell him to stop." Because some men just want to fight.
I thought that was going to come to more of a head, though. I felt like, that he immediately was in a room with witnesses, so it didn't really... There wasn't the urgent need to have, like, more people in here to see this kind of thing.
For me, it was when the other... I don't know what their positions are, maybe sergeant or something, pulled him inside and said, "Good job, son." Like, good job. For me, that was like, okay, there's your witness that was agreeing with everything else going on, saying this should not happen, and there's no reason to keep fighting.
Yeah.
Right, especially after the information that was being given.
That it was a trap. Of course, it's a trap.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to say what I was going to say.
But then it was twofold. One, he did his job, but then he had to give the message to the brother. And that was an emotional scene. And then
I was waiting for a hug.
I know.
Just hug him.
No.
Right, it's 1917. They don't hug people.
Yeah. And they're men in war. They don't hug.
I know, but I'm like, he just needed a hug.
Right.
I was like, oh.
Well, they both just needed a hug, honestly.
And then think about that final scene. That final scene. That classic storybook ending. It started with him asleep by a tree, and it ended with him falling asleep.
A little forced as far as the ending goes, but I get the symbolization.
But it was
full circle.
Tree of Life.
Yeah.
Symbolism there as well.
Yeah.
I personally don't like when they give a character's background in such like a forceful way too, like they did with the photos when he's like in the church or whatever with the French lady and the baby, and she's like, "Oh, do you have kids?" And he just straight up ignores her, and you're like, "Oh, maybe he doesn't." And then he sits there under the tree and he pulls out these family photos, and you're like, no, this man is like fighting for his family, for his kids, for his wife. And you see a little bit more of a person there, like more of a
Yeah.
reason why he's doing what he's doing. And I feel like it was very beautifully done to do it towards the end instead of, somewhere towards the middle or something.
Right, because I don't know if it would have had the same effect if you
No.
had it in the middle.
No, because you see him go through this horrible journey and he survives and you're just kind of like, great, why do I care that he survived?
Well, they touched on it in the beginning too, because he asked, "Did you get any mail back?"
Mm-hmm.
And the one guy's like, "Well, no, I haven't." And then when he's like, "Oh, bringing your medal home, that's it's you should
For
have
your
kept
family.
it." Da, da, da. And he's like, "Well, I hate seeing it." And then he just kind of stops mid sentence, doesn't go into detail about his wife or kid. It doesn't reveal if he has a wife or kid. At least it does for a wife, but it's peeks at it and then like puts it away
Because
Right.
it's not
Like,
important.
it's not important
No.
to the story.
Yeah.
No, because at first you think it's going to be about the one kid,
I wanted it
trying
to be.
trying to save his brother, but then it moves to his story. It turns to the friend's story, and it was done seamlessly, beautifully, and then just to have that at the end, where it's like all that crap that he went through was worth it, and then. I think, just that symbolism, sitting by the tree and just contemplating that, it was just a sense of utter gratitude. Yes, he went through basically hell and back again, hell and more, and then he had just a wave of gratitude that he finished the work that he needed to do, and then he could rest.
He accomplished, or he kept his promises to his friend.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that was the biggest sign of like relief for him, was when he asked, "Can I write to your mom?" And he was like, "Yes, absolutely." And then he could go sit down and just take a deep breath.
Well, and then as the movie kept going on and there was more hope that he was going to get there in time, you start noticing more colors come in too. Like it started off very drab where they were no color, nothing.
Very gray.
Then it was the red that I had talked about with the fires, and then it was the blue of the soldiers' uniforms that they're fighting against, and then the final scene where they're in the trenches, but it's like white sand trenches.
Right, but
with the
it
green grass,
Yeah.
and it just got more bright and hopeful. And then as he found the brother, you see the tree in the back, and it's such a vibrant green, such
Very
a
lush.
beautiful scene. You're like, oh, it's not drab anymore.
Yeah.
It's actually a nice place to relax and end.
Yeah, and it's actually a funny note about that scene, about that tree. Some of the crew members, I was reading in here, some of the crew members were thinking it was quite hilarious among some of the crew members that they were filming at that tree because a bunch of them took a whiz on it earlier in the
so
day.
Funny.
They're like, that's our pea tree, and they are filming the scene, the final scene of the movie where we all
Why be on the tree when there's all those trenches?
Yeah.
Oh, privacy.
So final
Lots of
thoughts.
extras.
Well, I think they did a great job depicting just a single day in a war that went on for years.
Yeah, it's again beautifully shot. It's really creative the way they did it. The time lapses. It's interesting to film 9 hours in a 2-hour span or however long it was. So they did a great job. I loved it, but I'm a cinematographer, so why would I not love it?
It was just a very real movie to watch, and it's something that we've been lacking on in the film industry for a very long time. So it was nice to finally get to see something like that, other than Dunkirk, because Dunkirk did the same thing. Not to.
Well, it was both these guys who did Dunkirk, so it obviously was going to look and be a great story.
I'm just saying they're lacking Christopher Nolan.
Well, thank you for joining us and listening to the Vibe Check podcast. Let us know what you thought of 1917 if you watched it. And also coming up, another one of our movie challenges, Run Lola Run. Forrest gave us that, so we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. And until then, always keep it right here and keep vibing.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching the episode. And if you're liking the podcast, be sure to let us know in the comments. Let us know how we're doing. Also, follow us, hit that like button, subscribe to know when we drop our latest videos. and we really appreciate all the support and feedback, so keep it coming. And as always, keep creating, build your brand, and go out there and tell your story.